Welcome back to NASM CPT exam prep. This is chapter 17 of 20, back in Basic and Applied Sciences and Nutritional Concepts Practice ends. Let's get into it. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to do 4 things. First, name the 3 macronutrients and their primary roles. Second, explain the role of micronutrients and hydration. Third, identify what's inside versus outside a trainer's nutrition scope of practice. And fourth, respond appropriately to a client asking for personalized meal advice. Let's build these one at a time. Let's talk about the big 3. Carbohydrates, the body's primary and most readily available energy source, especially for the glycolytic system, which you covered back in Lesson 4. Protein, used for tissue repair and growth, the raw material for recovering from training stress, connecting back to the general adaptation syndrome from Lesson 1. Fats, used for energy storage, hormone production, and supporting the oxidative energy system. Notice how each of these ties directly back to the energy systems you already learned. Carbs fuel glycolytic work. Fats fuel oxidative work. Protein repairs the tissue stressed during both. This connection makes the material feel less like isolated trivia. Let's go beyond calories. Micronutrients. Vitamins and minerals don't provide energy directly, but they're essential for the chemical processes behind the energy systems you covered in Lesson 4. Hydration. Even mild dehydration can impair performance and recovery. And here's a measurement wrinkle worth knowing. Hydration status is also one of the variables that can skew the bioelectrical impedance body composition readings you learned about back in Lesson 6. This is a nice reminder that this material isn't siloed. It actually affects how you interpret an earlier lesson's assessment tool. Here's the most tested boundary in this lesson. Inside scope. General, publicly available nutrition education, explaining what macronutrients are and how nutrition broadly supports training goals. Outside scope, individualized meal plans, prescribing specific caloric or macro targets for medical conditions. And medical nutrition therapy, that's a dietitian's territory. Notice the parallel structure here. Left column is fine. Right column is a referral. This is the same refer, don't diagnose boundary you saw in Lesson 6 and again in Lesson 16. And I want to be clear, this is a real scope of practice, legal and ethical line, not just an exam technicality. Here's a classic trap. A client asking, "What should I eat?" is one of the most common real-world scenarios where a new trainer accidentally practices outside their scope. General education is fine. A personalized prescription, especially for a client managing a health condition, is a referral, not a service a trainer should provide themselves. I want you to actually imagine this moment. How would you respond in real time to this exact question from a client? Because it will come up in real practice. Let's check your understanding. Question. Which macronutrient is the body's primary and most readily available energy source? Take a second and think it through. The correct answer is carbohydrates. Here's why. Carbohydrates are the body's primary and most readily available energy source, especially for the glycolytic system. One more question. A client with a diagnosed medical condition asks for a personalized meal plan. What is the appropriate response? Pause and think back to the scope of practice table. The correct answer is refer the client to a registered dietitian. Here's why. Individualized meal plans, especially for a medical condition, are outside a trainer's scope and should be referred to a registered dietitian. Let's bring it all together. There are 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates for primary energy, protein for repair and growth, fats for storage and hormones. Micronutrients support the chemical processes behind energy production. Hydration affects performance and body composition readings. Inside scope is general nutrition education. Outside scope is individualized meal plans or medical nutrition therapy. And what should I eat is a common real-world scope of practice trap. One more thing worth remembering. This same scope of practice line will reappear in Lesson 18, applied to supplements. Same principle, a different context. Great work getting through Lesson 17. Next up is Lesson 18, supplementation. We'll cover common supplement categories and the same scope of practice boundary applied to supplements. See you there.